Let's discuss what happens when a family member of yours goes woke. Because this is something that is happening to many, many people because your children are being indoctrinated by communists in their schools. For some reason, the Conservative Party and in the UK is doing nothing about it. The Republicans, thank God, are on the march against all of this critical race theory, identitarian nonsense, but people here are not doing a damn thing. And the Conservatives are letting it carry on. And so this is going to be something that happens to many people, and so why not? Why not go through this anonymous confession from someone who says that they can't converse with their woke 18-year-old daughter without getting angry. I like girls and boys, she announced recently. She meant in a romantic sense, and this person was like, right, okay, tiresome. As a young teen, her bedroom wall was covered in posters of Robert Pattinson. That's the guy from Twilight, isn't it?
I don't know.
I'm sure it's the vampire from Twilight. And she had the same boyfriend for several years through secondary school. She has decided that now she's attracted to both sexes. This would never be a problem, of course, but the reason is the father knows that his daughter doesn't like girls and boys. She likes boys. It's just always been the way.
Isn't this a Family Guy sketch?
Yes.
Like, I swear this happens to Meg.
Yes. But she says she's attracted to both to jump on another woke bandwagon because for Snowflake Generation Z, it's trendy to be gender ambiguous. My own daughter has done this. She's gone through the LGBT indoctrination in school, came home one day and said, "Oh, I'm bisexual." It's like, you're 11, you're not anything sexual. Like, and any leftists who are telling children that they're ex-sexual, stop it, you're disgusting. Sexualizing children, as usual. Nothing new. Anyway, in the past couple of years, I've listened to it all. Trans rights, patriarchy, plastics in the ocean. I agree with a lot of it. Well, there's your problem, isn't it? If you're writing for the Telegraph, it means you're generally conservative-leaning, theoretically. And if you agree with a lot of this woke nonsense, then you're a real conservative now. But my daughter's insistence that the world's ills are mainly down to me is becoming grating. She sees it as her job and right to make me see the error of my ways and atone for her lost future. So this woke indoctrination, critical race theory, and various other kinds of critical theory, you've got to understand it is deliberately designed, explicitly and consciously so, to change what is being analysed. Now, you can read pretty much any critical race theory text, and you will find in their introductions, they say, well, look, we didn't want to just analyse this, because that's a neutral approach to power dynamics. We want to be able to change them in the analysis. So the analysis itself presents a should. They've decided to buck Hume's is-ought distinction and say, no, because something is, therefore we ought, and that's intrinsic to wokeism and to critical analysis. Anyway, so another issue as well is that what they're trying to do with this is turn children into moral legislators. Now, I don't know whether anyone is watching who's never met a child. They're not. They're moral students. The adults are the moral legislators, and they teach the children what it is they should believe is right and wrong, because children don't know anything, which is why they're so open to be exploited by the left in our schools. Again, if you're a conservative and you're thinking, oh, I might become a teacher, now you have to become a teacher, because otherwise there's a communist who's going to indoctrinate your children. Anyway, to begin with, I was proud that she was becoming politically aware and encouraged her when she joined her fellow sixth formers to boycott lessons in protest of climate change. Get what you deserve. Equally, I was scorned when I mentioned how convenient it was that the protest rule was scheduled for a Friday, allowing students a long weekend. When I pointed out on Monday mornings that perhaps she'd prefer to walk to school and lower her carbon footprint, I was branded a boomer. So what? I'm furious about this, right? She's the child, right? So instantly you should be adopting the position of the adult and saying, oh, look, don't care about your opinion on this because you're a child. You don't know what you're talking about, but I do. For example, if you want her to walk... Yeah, sorry?
No, I mean, just the point of, like, if you're the adult here and your child's like, I want to skip Friday school to go protest.
Never.
I don't care. Go back to school.
Yeah. Not only that, it's like you're going to walk to school now because you were disrespectful. You don't just, oh, okay, boomer. No, okay, walk to school. You know, when you get back, no pudding. Anymore, you get even worse groundings. You know, the punishments continue mounting up until the child does as it's supposed to do. But yeah, you're never allowed to skip school for any reason. It should be the default position of the parent. Not these protests are on a Friday, then you don't go. You do not go to the protest. Anyway, I was supportive too when, along with her middle-class white friends, she joined a Black Lives Matter sit-in in the local park, attended by no people of colour because very few live in our village. This is what happens when your children are indoctrinated into an American problem that doesn't have an equivalent in small English villages. Black Lives Matter. Okay, dear.
The institutional racism of churro. Where's the black people? I don't know any, but you know.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Like some small English village, and they're talking about like American race politics.
Like the
Thanks.
the village of Pottingham, where
Yeah.
you know non-white population 0, but
Yes.
there's still systemic racism somewhere. Trust me.
Yes, there's severe systemic racism in St Austell. You know, like it's just some small Cornish village.
No,
and-
this did happen. There was a statue of I think it was like a Celtic Scot, and it was very famous, and they wanted to pull it down for being racist.
Mm-hmm.
And I Dankula retweeted it and be like, this guy never seen a black man in his life.
Mm-hmm.
How the hell would he be racist?
Who knows? And they say, I'm a lifelong advocate of equality. There we go. You're a communist. Become an advocate of freedom. Become a liberal. These things don't happen when you're an advocate of freedom. They only happen when you're an advocate of communism. I also understand about irony, but when I tried to talk to her about the white savior syndrome and virtue signaling, I was cancelled and told I could never understand because my white privilege makes me a part of the problem and not the solution.
Spanking's still legal, isn't it?
Yeah. But just lol. Like, I mean, like, sorry, you were cancelled by your own children. No, that they get grounded for that.
Ugh.
Like for back chatting, that's what you should be doing.
I mean, number one, just kids stop talking nonsense. Number two, going to the school. What the hell have you taught my child?
Yeah. But number 3, why is she getting pocket money?
Fair point.
You get any sort of back chat from your kids, you just cancel the pocket money. Sorry, no, you've got to understand how the power dynamics in the family work. You don't hold any of the power here. You know, you're supposed to do as you're told because I'm your father and I'm concerned about your emotional and mental well-being. And that means discipline. Discipline's good for the children as well. Anyway, now most discussions end in disagreement. Harry and Meghan, my view, spoilt hypocrites playing the Hollywood PR game to a T. Her view, victims of racist colonial system. This prince and his
so stupid.
princess are the victims of colonialism and racism and privilege. The victims of privilege. The royal victims of privilege. Obesity, my view, a public health disaster in which people need to eat less and move more. Her view, body positive people such as Towie's Gemma Collins are aspirational role models. Ah yes, if only we could all be obese, then the world would be a better place. Look at that incredibly fat person. Aspirational, thank God for you.
Like, it's such an obvious cope.
It's so
Like the fat positivity movement is such a joke.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Socialism, my view, a dangerous pipe dream that stifles innovation and ambition. Her view, utopia. So to summarize, his daughter's been programmed as an NPC by the school, by her local school, by her local tiny homogenous English village school. That's how far this has gone. This isn't just in the major cities; it's everywhere, right? She has opinions about everything, and they are all rigidly held. Then just tell her opinions are wrong on everything and don't listen. Increasingly, our conversations involve me biting my lip, then changing the subject to safer ground, such as the weather or plans for the weekend. It's exhausting. Well, this is what you get. You know, you should be instructing her in her moral values. But I guess the thing you should be doing is start observing the flaws and contradictions within the ideology she's espousing. Or failing that, just tell her that yes, you're the patriarchy because you're her dad and you're oppressing her. Go to her room. I do understand that every generation has an obligation to shock their parents, and it must be tough for today's teenagers. No, it's really easy for today's teenagers. That's the problem. That's why they're making up these problems and adopting them. Anyway, we are quite unshockable, speaking of himself, and so all that's left for rebellious teens is to smash up a few historical artifacts, then blame their parents for all the ills of the world. Well, I mean, you know, if you're like, well, I didn't provide her with anything to rebel against, so now she's got to rebel against literally everything. Again, whose fault is this? And I'm sorry, but there is a distinct permissiveness among the boomers that I actually think was a mistake. My own parents are remarkably permissive, and I think that might have been a bit of a mistake as well. You know, the permissiveness of the sort of, you know, 60s to 80s generation of parents that then raised kids in the sort of 90s. I think they should have had more boundaries, and they should have had more of a kind of understanding that, look, there's a pattern to your life and you should pay attention to this.
Well, I mean, you can also just look at the end results of leftist children, for example, and just look at them and be like, do you want your kid to end up like that?
Exactly. But I mean, the boomers, I suppose, you know, in their day, they didn't realise, and they had had the privilege of having come from a society that had social order imposed on it by custom and tradition. And so I guess they thought, well, you know, they expected that to persist while failing to uphold the necessary social institutions. But anyway, moving on, this is a story from America and how wokeism is literally tearing apart another family. And again, these are just horrible, horrible things that are happening. Because, I mean, the previous one, the dad is literally like, I dislike my daughter. So by politicizing everything, the family is being torn apart because the dad doesn't even like his own daughter. In this
She's
one,
not his daughter anymore. She's an NPC.
exactly, she's a political agent. But in this one, it's even worse. To be honest, this one's way worse because this is a mixed race family. So a white man and a black wife, and he says this. Woke anti-racism is child abuse. My family is the living antithesis of the of something that I've not heard of. But anyway, he says, I'm white, my wife's black. When we met, we saw each other's race, but we didn't think it was the most interesting thing about us. We foolishly thought our children could be part of a post-racial future in which all Americans could just be human beings to one another. Then came Trump, as if Trump is the one who's responsible for this, right?
You're blaming him for this. Is that really where he's going? Trump made all this happen. He was the one introducing dynasty politics.
Yep. Trump, unironically, would have been an advocate of the post-racial future. There is no way, if someone came to Trump and said, I'm an American, he would be interested in their race.
There is no black America, there is no white America, there is just America.
Exactly. And anyway, so then came Trump. I decided I should try and learn more about my fellow citizens, who I now realized were completely opaque to me. In contrast, my wife decided she was at war with an immutably white supremacist America. My wife began to read author...
Oh, God. I feel bad, man.
Exactly. Right. Eventually, she's going to come to the conclusion that my own husband is oppressing me.
Yeah.
Right. So my wife began to read authors like Nicole Hannah-Jones and Michael Harriot. She had a, quote, racial awakening, concluding that she had been, quote, inauthentically black all her life. So she has gained the critical race theory racial consciousness that they've all been trying to promote.
She's going to become an authentic black. What is that? Something they're going to prescribe to her?
I dread to think.
This
right?
is human, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. My wife came to think that her mind, trained in exclusive private schools and 2 Ivy League institutions for BA and PhD, had been colonized.
By who?
Well, the white man, obviously. So her education that got her to be a doctor made her colonized. I mean, it seems to be colonizing upwards, I guess. She's come to think she owes her success to being the right kind of black woman.
What? I in this case, the right kind of black woman, I suppose, is a black woman who succeeds. You know, works hard.
Yeah, works hard, gets married, has a family.
Like, are they critical racists saying here that the right kind of black woman is one that doesn't do that?
That seems to be the only inference we can take from this. That if that's an inauthentic black woman, an authentic black woman is presumably a single mother with no qualifications and no prospects. I mean, that's not my view. That's the critical race theory view. But anyway, she's an inauthentic, white-acting black woman who is non-threatening to white spaces.
She's not bombing Congress.
Yeah, she's not Assata Shakur. Most disturbing, she's reinterpreted her 5 decades of life, in which she only ever had one very mild story of a microaggression, as a history of brutal, grinding racial oppression. Yes, racial oppression often includes the oppressed getting doctorates at Ivy League institutions.
I hear South Africa was like that right until the 90s. Just any black man could walk in and get a doctorate.
Yeah.
They just worked hard enough.
And then Nelson Mandela appeared.
I mean, it's literally like the Uncle Ruckus view of the world.
Yeah, it really is. Deep beneath her inauthentic white acculturation is an oppressed black woman struggling for freedom. How much more free do you need to be? Like, what freedom are you asking for? Well, I mean, I got my PhD.
Got my family.
Got married. Got a career. Made loads of money. Live in a nice house. But I'm still not free. This is racial oppression. So, God, if only. Like,
I'll trade.
It's madness, isn't it? Right? So this is what racial grievance entrepreneurs like NHJ, I don't know who that's actually referring to, but some critical race theorists have done to my wife's mind. And what she's doing in turn to the minds of our small children makes my blood run cold. My wife is teaching our children that America hates them and wants to kill them because they're black, rather than take the birth of our children, ambiguous, innocent, raceless little creatures, as an opportunity to rethink the oppressive American race ideology and not hand it down to a new generation. My wife got woke after Trump and doubled down on the anti-racist racial essentialism. Here are 3 hair-raising stories. First story. She regularly explains to our kids that the police want to kill black people. Thanks, Mum.
Even the black police?
Even the black police. I imagine especially black police. Blacks are people police like to kill, and they always have been. They will keep using the pretext that they get scared when unarmed black people reach into cars like Jacob Blake or steal tasers like Rayshard Brooks, as long as using that pretext allows them to keep killing black people with impunity. As in, black people fight and attack the police, and so the police shoot them, and that's the police liking killing black people.
Just speak to any of the cops involved in any of the stories about, the black hero who's been killed.
What?
I just talk to them about the killing.
Watch body cam footage.
But just how the way the police feel. I mean, she's saying that the police here love doing it. They're getting a thrill. No way do they. Haunts them for the rest of their lives.
There was one video where this woman, I think she fired from a car at a cop, and so the cop shot her. The car drives off and crashes, and the cop just falls to his knees and starts sobbing.
Yeah.
It's like, oh God, there's 2 lives ruined there because this woman was a bloody idiot. Anyway, that's what she told her children, our children, who by plantation logic are among the black population that the police go out hoping to kill every day. Second story. She told our kids that Kyle Rittenhouse, like so many whites, hates black people, wants to kill black people. So he went to a BLM protest and opened fire.
What?
That's not what happened.
He didn't shoot a single black person, did he? I
No.
thought he just shot pedos.
He did. Pedos and wife beaters. And he was the one being attacked.
Sorry, a pedo's politically black now. Is that how this
And it
works?
wasn't a BLM protest, it was an Antifa riot.
God, the level of...
And he didn't just open fire, he was physically assaulted and defended himself.
Yeah.
But anyway, the lies that she's got from Twitter, clearly, are the problem here. When I asked in a neutral way why she thought Rittenhouse had shot those people, she became upset and stormed out of the house and did not return for 3 hours.
Jesus Christ. I mean, that's awful.
It's terrible. But she knows she's lying.
Yeah.
She knows there's a big lie, right? The obvious answer is that Rittenhouse is a white supremacist. I don't even think she knows that he shot only white people. Any probing beyond the self-evident axiom is too triggering to indulge. And he says, by the way, I've no defense of Rittenhouse, a stupid, confused kid whose foolishness and apparent criminal behavior led to the needless killing of 2 people. It wasn't needless, and they were both pedophiles. Anyway, third story. We drove past a poster that said Ahmad, with a picture of Ahmad Arbery. Daughter, who's that? Wife, a black man who was killed. My 7-year-old daughter, now trained to think that white people hate and want to kill black people like her, went straight to the inference, oh, so they killed him because they hate black people. It's what she's doing to her own children. It's because she became woke. I don't even know how her husband deals with this. My daughter needed no further information to infer that black men have been killed because they hate white people, hate black people. This is bad enough, but what's worse is that my wife is training herself to see herself as one of these universally hated black people whom everyone wants to kill. Let the implications of that for my girl's soul, for the ease with which she will encounter the world, sink in. My wife wants her to, quote, inherit the wound, as Thomas Chatwell has said, when she should inherit nothing but joy, love, and a sense of her own endless potential in the world that will reward her for her beauty and brilliance, not punish her for her hatred of her blackness. As in, she got married, had kids, became a doctor, and now she's inheriting a wound.
You know what's weird? You ever seen the Louis Theroux documentary where he meets with members of the Klan and whatnot, and they've got families?
Maybe.
It's exactly the same.
Really?
Exactly the same situation where they're like, no, I need to teach my kids about white power and all the rest of it and how the world is out to kill them because they're white. And being obsessed with that sort of stuff.
Right.
Where it's like, why? Like your child, like the Westboro Baptist Church, where they've got their 2-year-olds holding signs saying God hates, F word.
Yeah. Why does my wife want our kids to inherit the wound? I suspect it's because, due to her parents' successes, who fought in the civil rights battles of the 60s and became a surgeon and a teacher, she never inherited the wound herself and has come to feel inauthentically black. So you can only be black if you are being oppressed.
And she's not.
She's doing very well for herself, and rightfully so, and I bet she earned everything that she has. And now she's been persuaded by critical race theorists that actually she's not really a black person at all, and she should hate everything around her and that the world is coming together. And she's making her children think this. After all, NHJ and Coates, Tanahashi Coates, are always telling her how traumatized she should be because she's black in America. So she has come to believe that only when she viscerally feels the wound that all black people are supposed to feel, she will herself be authentic. My wife's father told me he's glad his daughter and Obama too come from the post-civil rights generation because they did not acquire his, quote, black rage. This is why Obama could be elected, he said, and why race is never important to his daughter and my wife until now. Newly desiring to feel the wound, but not able to authentically experience it due to a life of untroubled privilege, she's living vicariously through her kids, trying to inflict the wound upon them. Maybe if she can't be an authentically wounded black person, they can. This is awful. This is absolutely awful. Like the father who pushed his son into sports into which he could not excel himself, she's pushing her children into a racial grievance that she has read about in books in the New York Times, but has never had a chance to experience for herself. The only viable alternative to this child abuse I've seen in the writing of Thomas Chatwell, the alternative my 80-year-old father-in-law offered, is as bad as my wife's plan. He said he's happy his grandkids will identify as white, so they will never have to feel the sense of inherent worthlessness compared to whites that he felt coming in the age of the Jim Crow South. His revelation of his own wound saddened me immeasurably. This proud surgeon's scars bears witness to the country that America used to be, but my father-in-law's situation, a binary situation, and the only one this black man from another era could come up with, is as bad as my wife's. I don't want my children to identify as white any more than black. I want them to be deeply aware of the complex and difficult but often beautiful histories behind their parental lineages, but I pray they identify into neither blackness nor whiteness. Each of these legacies is heavy, one with pain, the other with guilt. Yes, the best thing, of course, for the children to identify as Americans. Don't I have to say that? Why do I have to say that?
Apparently, yes.
It's just such a normal, obvious thing. Like, being American and your skin color actually doesn't matter. That's actually the great thing that the Americans did. That's the great thing about the American identity.
One of the sad things about them as well, like, all of you look the damn same to us. Like, all of you talk the same, all of you act the same to us. Like, all of the black and white Americans, I can't tell the damn difference between you people.
Yeah, trust us, we know that you're Americans. We the foreigners are very aware, and fundamentally you do all act kind of the same. Not an insult, obviously, it's just an observation.
No, you're just American, and be it. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, it's just an American thing. Anyway, I want them to be the generation that at last transcends the limiting and soul-destroying American skin game. I want them not to identify but empathize deeply with the complexities of their heritage without being limited by the trauma and shame it would oppose. To me, that's how we can simply become fellow citizens and fellow humans to one another. So I'm in this for the long game, and a game in which my wife, with her racial essentialism agenda, has as yet no real idea that she is an opponent. I'm committed to mitigating the effects of what I see as her child abuse where I can, and until our kids are old enough to read this stuff for themselves, and through other former writers. So, ripping apart families, and in this father's view, abusing his children with critical race theory. If you enjoyed this segment from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, you can watch the full broadcast live every weekday at 1 p.m. UK time on lotuseaters.com.